we already know. I just got back from 15 months. India, Assam, Upper Assam, and I checked in. Before, I don't know at what date I knew that I was going to be assigned to Love Field, to the ferry command. We'll deliver these planes to wherever they need to be delivered to. And but there's a rule that people coming in back for overseas assignment will not have to go overseas for 6 months. And several say, well, we just been back from overseas. And they said, well, I realize that, and you can get out of this if you want to. I just suggest you don't. But the group of us on one day went up to Indiana, and each got our airplane and flew it back to Fairfield, and then it was called Fairfield Air Base. It's now Travis on the pad there where they directed us, and we were eating dinner that night. And about the only time I remember all of us, but just about all of us, eating dinner at the same time. But they came in with this nice little announcement. They have moved the aircraft, towed all your aircraft, and in the process they've broken the tail wheel. And we, of course, can't fly the aircraft without locking mechanism on the tail wheel. So, and it says we do not have the parts to fix it here, and it should probably take several weeks to get all of them done. And that was the last we heard report as far as the tail wheel for quite a while. And so we started what we thought would be about a three-week delay, and the 3 weeks was up, and they started to get the modified, get the tail wheel repaired. But this is also a good season for fog. It's this time of the year. It was in December. The Battle of the Bulge was going full blast, and everybody's standing around watching what's going to happen next over there. That was our biggest entertainment, is watching the war go by before us here while we were waiting to deliver this aircraft to the South Pacific. And well, Christmas came. We still hadn't delivered. The end of January when we finished that road trip was supposed to take about a week or less. But let me say once we decided we could go one day, and it was our turn, and it took off. From the time I sat in a seat to get started, it was about 16 hours that I sat there. And one little factor that made that a little more responsibility on me is that the young man that was flying as my co-pilot had never been in a single engine, had been in nothing but a single engine aircraft. And I could have complained, I think, but I didn't. He was nice. It was a nice fellow, and I couldn't let him do anything but fly en route, which helped a little bit. And I just couldn't relax as much as I would like to have. I sat there for 16 hours, and I got up a couple of times to go to the bathroom, and that was it. And everything went well. One little shocker. You have all the fuel, these barrels of fuel in the aircraft. They are all hooked together, and with a line running to the cockpit and to the wing tanks, so you could switch one or off. So our burden was to get those empty as soon as we could. After you let it get out, with it flew out for an hour or so, we really be sure everything else is okay. And then you check those out, and we turned them on, and both engines quit. So he still had his hand on the switch, of course. The switch of the engineer, and they perked up, and we went right on. And we said, well, let's fly it about 30 minutes before we try it again, get everything settled down. And in 30 minutes we tried it again, and it worked fine. So the fuel was flowing perfect. And we didn't have one bit of trouble after that. We had a good navigator and radio operator and everything that we needed to go across my first view of the Pacific, and my first one to fly over an ocean, and of any size, water of any size. So but I was tired, and you got daylight. We were above the clouds, and the navigator said, well, we're getting in, we should be able to get radio contact. So we made radio contact. They suggested we let down below the clouds. You're getting in close to the island now. And so we let it down below. I didn't realize it, but when that wow just flashed up in my face right there, closer than we expected, and it was so beautiful, and I was so thankful. But I hadn't even realized that there had been any attention at all. But I realized then that there had been a lot of attention, and I wasn't really tired. I was tired, but I wasn't sleepy, and it worked out pretty well as far as my endurance is concerned. So we went in and got landing instructions, and I didn't make a very good landing, but I wasn't ashamed of that, as tired as I was. So we turned the aircraft over to the people to do what they needed to do to it. They took out all the tanks, that were the barrels that we used for the long distance flight, and they took all that out and got the craft set up, and we had a day of rest. So a day of rest, and then the next day, the flight on the first leg, we. This is quite a little way still down to our destination, but none of the days were long days. They just did what was comfortable to then fly in the daylight, and lots of little islands. And so we flew, and we stopped at our first land. We didn't even have a tank very full, I don't think, but I'm not even sure about that. But we got there. We filled the tanks up to what we needed to go to the next landing place, which was going to be where we were supposed to spend the night. And this is one that I have been there 2 or 3 times, and it was a place that Pan Am had established when they started the transocean flights with the flying boats. They would find daylight, and when they'd get to this place, we'd just spend the night. We were doing the same thing. We were taking making it real easy as far as the work is concerned. And we spent the night. We got in, and people were going to that place to have drinks that you didn't have on any other those outposts like that. But this was especially nice, but I can't even remember the name of it. And I know I've been there at least 2 times and maybe 3 times. I tried last night to try to know what for sure is that the name of that island, but I don't have it. Uh, but it's just there, and so then the next day we were to fly to next one is in the Japanese had selected to be one of their strong points, and it's Tarawa is the name of the time it's pronounced in Tarawa, but there was a really bloody battle there, all Marines, and I think there's hundreds of them were killed because they hit the rocks before they were supposed to come in on the beach, and I didn't know anything about it until we landed and they told us about the big battle that had been there, and there's no signs of it then. It had only been a few weeks, but they'd cleaned it up pretty well, and they just put a crew there to service aircraft in, and it would not be unimportant. It was the only important part of it is to get the Japanese out of there. And so then the next day, we had a couple of stops. Our first fueling stop was Guadalcanal. And if you don't know much about the history, that's one of the most devastating battles. Went for months and months, and no prisoners taken on either side. And there was no place for prisoners. You had no way of taking care of prisoners, and so they just didn't take any prisoners. And that's I don't know that has ever been stated, but it's well known that they weren't taking any prisoners. And we saw this battlefield, and it had been quite a while, and it still had showed a lot of wear and tear from the battle that had there, and it was the first big victory, and it was really the turning point against the Japanese. And once they lost that, there was a big Navy battle also that took place here, South Pacific, Battle of the South Pacific, and then we flew to another short run, just picked up gas. We didn't particularly have to do that, but there's procedure, normal procedure. Refuel there, and it's a British New Guinea. It was a big valley there, nice valley, and in fact the name of it then was a farm valley or something, some name indicating it was a farmer's area. And we refueled there, and then it was just a short stop to this little island of Biak sitting out in this big bay, with a hook on a New Guinea. There's a big there, and then right out to the edge of this bay is just big enough for a runway, and quite a bit of jungle, and but they cleared off and made a runway there, and you got it. They were still fighting the Japanese on the mainland, on New Guinea. In fact, the people that were doing the mopping up in New Guinea was the 1st Infantry Division, which I was a member of before I went to the Aviation Cadets. And it was really something that I knew some of the people, but they were getting ready to go to the Philippines. They about cleaned up their job down there. They never did get all of them. They left some in the jungle. Come out for several years later, I think. Japanese that I didn't even know that the war was over, but we went landed at Biak, and it was just about night, and it was still before sundown. And we were there a little bit before we had our dinner there. And while we were eating dinner, they had, oh, we got another Japanese. We found them out in the garbage. And there was a little, like a few comments about that. And then I went to bed and got up the next morning. And these B-24s, that bombers, they took these off the assembly line, made them into a cargo plane, and then fixed them for they could carry passengers. All fixed up. It was quiet. It was nice. It ran smooth, and it was one of these B-24s with transports. It's B-24 airliner. It looked like it was going to be used for civilians somewhere. But anyway, they used this for the outlying areas. I don't remember now if I got the airliner at Hawaii or San Francisco. We got the airliner and reported back into my wife at the end of January. A big thing when they first said deliver a C-46 to the South Pacific, that didn't seem very practical. And but they said, well, that's the only way we can get it there. We got to ship these things. So, and the troop carrier needs it. And they were the big battles was in the Philippines then, and so they had been waiting on there for these aircraft, but that was this is in February, and I continued with. I had checked out with. They checked me out on all the twin-engine aircraft they had. We would be delivering, and I delivered a C-47 to Canada. I was surprised when they said you're going to check you out on a P-38, and but they did, and I delivered a P-38 from Oklahoma to no room for anything except you. And we made a room by taking a panel off a radio and put my bag in the radio compartment. And spent the night at Atlanta, and then delivered it next morning. I started a foggy morning, but it was good enough for me to. They got me into to the airport there in the New York area, and that was the only ones I delivered. Something else came up that they were some of these pilots, if they wanted to go to the 4-engine transports, and they were putting on a big drive. The war was in it's just about over in Europe, and that March, I guess, when I went down to that training, and so I went to spend that training, and then finished that in June, and then now this begins my fourth engine transport career. That's how I flew most of the time after that.